Hey, how's it going guys? Chris here with another one of those Battlefield 1 weapon guides. And in today's video, we're going to be checking out the Ross MKIII that came along in the Apocalypse DLC. A mid-range Canadian rifle that you'll be able to equip on a scout loadout. The straight-pull bolt-action Ross rifle, which design was influenced by the Austro-Hungarian Mannlicher M1895 or the Gewehr M95 in Battlefield 1, went through quite a few different stages of development over the course of its life cycle, with each new model basically being an updated version of the last, mainly designed to correct the defects and shortcomings that the previous rifles suffered from. The later Mark III variants, created in 1910, were chambered to fire the 303 British round, though a slightly larger one than the previous 280 Ross cartridge used in the 1907 Mark II models, and the gun held a total of 5 bullets within its internal magazine, slotted in via stripper clips for quicker reloads. And although the Mark III would be the outcome from many updated variants, you'd expect the rifle to be a reliable and dependable weapon, having gone through many improvements to counter the problems of the past iterations. But the Mark III was still in fact cursed with loads of faults and issues. The rifle wasn't really suitable for trench combat, down to its size and weight. It was highly susceptible to jamming from those grimy, muddy conditions. The gun had very close chamber tolerances, meaning the cartridges had to be the perfect size in order to work, plus the bayonet was also known to just fall off the rifle when it was fired sometimes. Not exactly something that you'd want to happen during battle. So, although the Ross rifle was a Canadian-made weapon, it was actually designed by a man from Scotland called Charles Ross at the very end of the 19th century. The UK refused to license the Enfield SMLE design for production in Canada, so Ross stepped in and introduced his own rifle, offering to pay for a new factory to manufacture said rifle for it to be put into Canadian military. With the offer accepted in 1903, production began, and the first model of the Ross rifles were in the hands of Canadian Mounted Police in 1905. But it didn't take a huge amount of time before problems started to surface. After numerous redesigns and amendments, the Ross MKIII was born in 1910, which would wind up to be the standard service rifle for Canadian troops during World War I, unfortunately for the Canadians. Let's just say that it had a hell of a lot of problems, and just simply wasn't designed for trench combat. The gun was even known in some rare situations to seriously injure and even kill the user, as troops would regularly dismantle the guns for routine cleaning, but if one wasn't assembled correctly, with the bolt not being locked to the receiver, the user could fire the rifle, only for the bolt to violently launch backwards right into their face, sometimes delivering fatal results. Safety rivets were later added to the Ross rifles to stop this from happening, though these very same rivets also made the gun harder to disassemble and clean. Many Canadian soldiers often ditched their Ross rifles in exchange for early Enfield if they happened to find one, as although the Canadian authorities threatened to punish them for doing so, this decision far outweighed the consequences for a lot of troops. Eventually, after the Canadian Minister of Militia and Defence, Sam Hughes, ignored the serious and ridiculous amount of issues surrounding the Ross rifle's practicality on the battlefield, British High Command practically ordered the Ross rifle to be removed from frontline service to replace by the SMLE. Despite being a really accurate weapon, later favoured by snipers and sportsmen, the Ross rifle just wasn't rugged enough for the harsh, muddy environments it was expected to endure. It worked well as a training gun when shooting targets at the range, but not so much when it was put through hell, tasked to keep the user alive in such awful conditions. But anyway, fortunately for us, none of the Ross rifle's reliability issues are addressed in Battlefield 1, as it's just a game, and the Ross MKIII came along as part of the Apocalypse DLC to be used by the Scout class. There's only one variant of the Ross rifle, with that being the Marksman, and it shouldn't take very long at all to get, as if you want to unlock it, all you need to do is get 50 kills whilst playing as a Scout. So just pick up your favourite Scout rifle, hop into a game mode of your choice, and just rack up the kills. Nice and easy. When it comes to power, those 303 British rounds are going to be at their strongest against mid-range targets, as the Ross MKIII deals its minimum damage of 80 up to 20 meters, which will then gradually start to increase, reaching the gun's maximum damage output of 100 at 40 meters. This is where that one-hit kill sweet spot zone lies, leading right the way up to 75 meters. Then beyond here, the damage will begin to drop down again, back to 80 at the distance of 150 meters. So the Ross rifle has the exact same damage figures as the SMLE Mark III, with it firing the same bullets, and so it's capable of taking players out with a well-placed shot to the chest within a mid-range span of 35 meters, which isn't exactly the biggest sweet spot zone in the world, but still slightly larger than the close-range Vetterli and Arasaka rifles' one-hit kill areas. Otherwise, unless you manage to plant one of those bullets into your opponent's head, it's going to take 2 shots to bring someone down. Though with the Ross Rifle being more powerful at closer distances than a lot of the other scout weapons in the game, because it's capable of dishing out a higher amount of damage against players wandering around at those medium ranges, this makes it more effective at taking out nearby targets who have already been weakened first, allowing the gun to be a suitable aggressive rifle for offensive playstyles. But this also means that it's not exactly the deadliest gun for long distance sniper showdowns, dealing a lower but still respectable amount of damage further away. One of the best aspects of the Ross Rifle is the fact that it fires at a nippy speed of 62 RPM, which is quicker than a good majority of the other bolt-action rifles. It's only slightly beaten by the Gewehr M95, which fires a tiny bit faster, and it's not exactly miles behind the Carcano M91, shooting at 73 RPM. But unlike both of these rifles, the Ross MKIII is gifted with its one-hit kill sweet spot zone, allowing you to kill much faster and easier than both of those guns when you're taking on targets within that sweet spot zone. And if you're snapping from target to target, wiping out several players one after the other, the Ross Rifle's speed and mid-range power can complement an aggressive playstyle nicely. That extra momentum allows for some rapid takedowns, even outside of that one-hit kill area, as you'll be able to land 2 shots on another player quicker than a lot of other scout weapons, over pretty much any distance. Plus, if you miss your target, you're not going to be punished quite so harshly, being able to correct your aim and fire off that next bullet a bit sooner, making the Ross Rifle a very forgiving weapon to use in comparison to a lot of the others. With the gun having the same muzzle velocity as the SMLE at 740 meters per second, this makes it even more effective to use for taking out enemies within its optimal killing area, as you're not going to need to lead player movement by too much over medium ranges. But you might have to judge shots a bit more so against players that are running around far into the distance. It's not exactly the fastest bullet travel speed, but it's still quicker than a lot of other mid-range rifles like the Lebel, Carcano, Gewehr M95, and of course the Martini Henry, slightly boosting its ease of use for those quick-fire kills. Unsurprisingly, the Ross MKIII's got the exact same recoil pattern as the other rifles, most of which have a vertical recoil value of 2 and a horizontal value of 1. This isn't anything out of the ordinary, and so it's going to kick around after every shot in a similar way to the other snipers. And with the gun being a Marksman variant, this means that you're not going to be given any sort of statistical advantage over some of the other rifle variants, such as the infantry's quicker spread and recoil decreases, or the carbine variant's lower aim down sight spread. But you will be given your own mid-range telescopic sight for acquiring targets further away a little easier, just like the SMLE Marksman. But the Ross MKIII allowed you to do something that the SMLE can't. Because the gun features a straight pull bolt, inspired by the Gewehr M95, this means that you can stay scoped in while cycling the bolt after firing, letting you remain in ADS for quicker target acquisition, and for landing consecutive shots one after the other easily, without having to unscope first. Now this massively complements the Ross Rifle's speedy rate of fire, and it also makes it easier to use, as if you land a shot on an enemy player in the distance that doesn't kill them, then it'll make landing the next one less of a problem, being able to stay locked in on target whilst that next bullet is chambered. Definitely a handy feature to have for taking on other scouts and players in the distance, something that a lot of other rifles just aren't capable of doing. As far as ammo capacity goes, the Ross MKIII doesn't do anything particularly amazing, and despite having quite a lot of similar properties to the SMLE regarding power and muzzle velocity, this is one factor that gives the SMLE an edge, essentially having double the ammo capacity, being able to hold 2 5-round clips at once. Compared to other scout weapons, 5 rounds is an average sort of figure, and if you're landing sweet spot kills and headshots, then you can potentially net yourself up to 5 kills per full magazine, unless you're hardcore enough to take down 2 players with 1 bullet of course. Although the Ross Rifle shoots pretty quickly, it doesn't really reload individual cartridges very fast, taking up to about a second for every fresh bullet added to the gun's magazine. Taking pre and post reload delays into account, it's going to take about 3 to 5 seconds to perform a tactical reload, to top the rifle up with 1 to 3 individual rounds, making it a little bit slower than a fair few of the other scout weapons. Though if you've only got 1 bullet left over in the chamber, then you can eject said bullet in exchange for a quicker clip reload, taking 3.8 seconds, which is on par with a lot of the other guns. This gives you a tactical decision when choosing to reload, as you don't have to fire off all 5 rounds to perform a clip reload if you want to cut down that time. Though considering it could still take up to 5 seconds to top the magazine up with 3 additional shots, this could still be seen as a slight drawback if you're up on the front lines, as tactical reloads could increase your vulnerability, especially with the gun firing off those rounds and losing that ammo at a quicker rate than normal. So in conclusion, the Ross MKIII is a mid-range monster, inflicting higher amounts of damage closer to all the action whilst being a slightly weaker option for long-distance sniping. It's a bit of a mashup between the M95 and the SMLE Mark III Marksman, sharing some of its best statistical advantages and traits between the two rifles, but at the same time becoming its own thing in the process, being more adaptable for slightly longer range fights than the Gewehr M95 and being able to fire quicker follow-up shots than the SMLE. The gun's higher rate of fire helps to decrease kill times, allowing you to take out multiple targets one after the other fairly quickly. And because it shares the same straight pull bolt action as the M95, you can stay scoped in whilst firing consecutive shots, making it even more effective for acquiring targets with that marksman scope, going hand in hand with that quicker fire rate really nicely. Firing those bullets out at the moderate speed of 740 meters per second should provide you with enough velocity to take on targets over those mid-ranges easy enough. Though it's not exactly the fastest, and you still might have to shoot slightly in front of a moving target if they're quite far away. But although the Ross MKIII fires quicker than the SMLE, and has the ability to stay scoped whilst doing so, the rifle can only hold one clip at a time, basically halving the ammo capacity, which might put a bit more pressure on you to land shots on target and make every bullet count. Plus, because it's not exactly the fastest weapon to reload out of the bunch, this could limit the gun's usability up on the front lines, leaving you open to attack more often. Though a 5-round ammo capacity is still pretty normal regarding scout rifles, so it's not really a massive flaw, just so long as you keep an eye on that ammo counter and try to reload tactically whenever you're out of enemy sightlines. But overall, the Ross MKIII is an extremely reliable and effective rifle to bring along to the battle for medium range fights, as its speed and high mid-range power is enough to set it aside from a lot of the other guns already on offer, giving it some unique qualities that work really well together when combined. And despite being a bit of a failure in real life, the Ross MKIII in Battlefield 1 can be a very deadly competitive rifle, capable of punishing the enemy team when used in an offensive manner in the hands of an accurate player. So that's all I've got for you in this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Hit that like button if you did, and of course subscribe for loads more Battlefield content right here on my channel if you haven't already. Take it easy, and I'll be seeing you in that next episode.